Good morning, Mr. Moderator, fellow colleagues at the head table, people who were kind enough to invite me here, and you long-suffering people who will fortunately or unfortunately be subject to what I have to say for the next few minutes. First, let us agree on what an economy is. An economy is a physical entity that can be defined in terms of its human components. An economy is about people and about their transactions, including consumption, exchange, and disposal, in relation to physical and non-physical assets that have value, that they own, that they owe, or that they control. Value, in turn, is related to usefulness, subjectively or objectively defined, and availability, and in particular, whether that availability can be controlled in some sustainable way by individuals or groups. Thus, gold is mostly useful, or is useful mostly because it is subjectively desirable. It is in short supply relative to demand, and since it takes effort and resources to produce, its availability can be controlled by those who own or control its production. So it costs money. Air on the surface of this planet is even more useful than gold, both subjectively and objectively. But its availability and supply so far have been difficult to bring under the control of individuals, so that its value is priceless in the sense that it cannot be priced, and therefore it is free. There are some climate changes and environmental degradation issues that you may want to explore here in relation to air. Look, for example, at what has been happening to water. Water used to be free. Now it is an expensive component, as my good friend Santino can testify. Air is in short supply in some areas relative to demand, and in that kind of situation, a market emerges. You need think only of astronauts and scuba divers. They have to pay for the air they carry around with them. I have started in this way because I want to make the point that an economy exists only so far as it can be made subject to rules that are generally followed by the participants in that transactions and value environment, whether or not the arrangements for the settlement of disputes are formal, as in the case of a normal country, or whether dispute settlement arrangements are informal, as in the case of what we think we know about the mafiosi. If you don't pay your debts, they break your legs. When we speak of the economy of Belize, we speak of the ownership, control, and use of assets and liabilities, physical and intangible, in a defined jurisdictional environment, bearing in mind, of course, that transactions and other exchanges take place not only within the physical boundaries of Belize, but also across boundaries with other jurisdictions. In such cases, it is always appropriate to agree beforehand, explicitly or implicitly, on the procedures and arrangements to settle disputes that will inevitably arise at some point or other. Implicit in the statement, of course, is the notion that it is someone's responsibility to manage the jurisdiction and to ensure that an environment continues to exist in which individuals and business firms can focus on the business of asset investment, on consumption, on exchange, and on asset disposal, without having themselves also to allocate any considerable extent of effort, time, and resources to ensure their own physical security, to maintain dispute settlement arrangements, and to ensure order and good management in a rules-based system that operates equitably and transparently, and that is characterized by effective accountability. In other words, there is need for effective, efficient, and fair government. What are the main features of our Belize economy? I'd like to draw your attention here to a very useful publication, which on one page, that is table 1.1 in the 2007 annual report of the Central Bank of Belize, which presents a short time series of important performance measures of the Belize economy. I'm suggesting that if you take a look at that publication, they do it every year, the Central Bank's annual report, you get a comprehensive look at all the features of the economy of the country. It's available on the Central Bank's website. All you need to do is Google it. We can speak later during question time about the need for more frequent and more comprehensive reporting on the economy rather than the once-a-year thing that the Central Bank does. The first thing that you should notice, of course, is the size of the economy, both in absolute gross domestic product terms, GDP terms, and in per capita GDP terms. Belize is small in relation to other countries in the world, and its income level puts us towards the lower end of the lower middle income group. Not shown in the data is the distribution of income in Belize. But your eyes can tell you, on the assumption that people spend generally in relation to their income, that the country's income is very unequally distributed. That a large share of income accrues to a proportionately much smaller number of people, leaving a smaller share of the total to be shared among a larger percentage of the population. This combination of low income to start with and unequal distribution of that income inevitably means that we have considerable poverty in our country. The next thing that you should notice is that the economy is very open. By this I mean that there is a high proportion of external trade to GDP, to our total production. The exports to GDP and imports to GDP ratios are very high. This is a historical result of the fact that the country as we know it, that is post-Mayan Belize, was established to provide materials to the more developed countries, principally the United Kingdom, and that the focus of operation was always and has always been overseas. We have been an outward-looking country. With the bulk of our resources being utilized to meet metropolitan market needs, and with our lifestyles being determined by overseas patterns, a situation that continues to hold, domestic consumption and investments were and are largely met by imports, so that the openness that I speak about is a structural result of this external operational focus. We are highly dependent on trade. I leave you to speculate what would have happened if the recent crisis in the sugar industry is not resolved quickly. And notice I say is rather than was. Note, however, that because of Belize's small size, because we produce for export items that are produced in larger quantities by other countries, Belize is and because we import small quantities of the same things that are imported in much larger quantities by other countries, Belize is a price taker on both sides. We don't have any control over the prices we get for our products. We don't have any control over the prices we pay for what we import. And we are therefore completely vulnerable to global market changes. Worse, because of the relative inflexibility we exhibit in our product export and import structures, given the large proportion of our productive capacity that are tied up in our main export industries, we don't respond quickly to global market changes, including the increasing compression of the product cycle. We continue to produce, except perhaps in parts of tourism, at the basic commodity end of the spectrum. And even in tourism, we run the risk of the novelty of a new destination wearing off. The increasing crime situation, of course, does not help.